Cocoliztli, the mysterious pestilence. Cocoliztli, the mysteriously devastating plague of the Aztecs, still has modern day scientists scrambling to identify and understand the causative agent, known as Cocoliztli, which in the native tongue simply means pestilence. But there is nothing simple about Cocoliztli. 16th century physicians were all too well aware of other diseases such as smallpox, measles, diphtheria, bubonic plague, malaria, dengue fever, and more, but Cocoliztli had them stumped. Remembered as the plague of the Aztecs, Cocoliztli devastated the Mesoamerican population with its first outbreak, taking the lives of 80% of the Mexican population, roughly between 5 to 7 million natives. Over the next 3 centuries, Mesoamerica endured 11 more recurrent outbreaks, leaving in its wake an estimated 15 million predominantly natives dead. Cocoliztli ravaged its victims with a plethora of violent symptoms recorded: delirium, green and black urine, black tongue, seizures, gangrene, malaise. Blood flowed from the ears, nose, and gums, concluding with insanity and death within 2 to 3 days. The Aztec society was one of the most advanced civilizations of their time, boasting strict environmental and sanitation protocols way ahead of the European counterparts. Records indicate that they had designated members of the community that were well on their way to match the curative properties of plant and animal substances with medical conditions, which was recorded by native specialists Sahagún and Juan Baradino. Physicians of the 16th century, including Francisco Hernandez and the physician for King Philip II, were at a loss understanding the cause of the plague, and the Mesoamerica community turned to their emperor, Hui, to the capital of the city of Tenochtitlan, urging for sacrificial rites to continue without ceasing. They believed that their god, Huitzilopochtli, was angry with them and brought Cocoliztli to them as a punishment. Over the years, most supported the theory that it was a viral hemorrhagic fever, perhaps caused by measles, pneumonic plague, and other suspected typhoid. While the cause of Cocoliztli remains elusive, for centuries most people believed it to be just another plague brought to the Americas by European colonists and the Spanish conquistadors. And for good reason. Colonization is well known for introducing devastating diseases such as typhoid, bubonic plague, measles, mumps, and smallpox into the native population, leading to staggering death tolls. January 2018, Germany's Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History published the results of a study focused on 24 corpses buried in the town of Tepecula, Uganda, dating 1545, the time of the first known Cocoliztli outbreak. They chose another 5 corpses from another burial site dated 100 years earlier to compare the DNA extracts from pre-colonial samples. Pathogens remain entombed inside the inner chambers of teeth. Scientists are able to extract DNA and compare the strands with known pathogens stored in a database. Results showed that 10 of the 24 samples from the 1545 burial site revealed the genome of Salmonella enterica, in particular paratyphoid type C, while the 5 samples from 100 years earlier did not. Paratyphoid is a clinically similar illness to typhoid, which is caused by a different serotype than progenitor strains of S. enterica are believed to have been evolving for over 6,500 years, aligning with the Neolithic period in which the human population shifted from hunter-gatherers to nomadic herd farmers. A molecular genetic link exists resulting from the screening of the ancient remains that revealed progenitors of 6 strains of S. enterica, including paratyphoid C, solely within the herd farmer population. Aligning the newfound DNA genome structure with other strains of S. enterica, scientists discovered that the same strain was detected in a Norwegian woman who died in 1200, tying this particular strain to one that was present 300 years ago all the way across the ocean. So that's it then. It certainly seems so. In fact, the likes of Nature Magazine, National Geographic, and History Channel just about seems to be pleased with this conclusion. So there it is, Salmonella enterica, paratyphoid type C. It's pretty much what's accepted to be the causative agent of upwards of 15 million deaths. Case closed. Or is it? Rudolph Acuña Soto, a renowned epidemiologist at National Autonomous University of Mexico City, isn't buying it, stating imported diseases likely did kill many, but Cocoliztli, which wiped out an estimated 12 to 15 million Indians during a 1545 outbreak and 2 million in 1576 outbreak, probably with hemorrhagic fever, claiming that Cocoliztli's pattern of outbreaks, quote, indicates the existence of an endemic lifestyle, an indigenous viral agent, unquote, and that these findings do not represent or accurately fit Cocoliztli, and that, quote, viral hunters of the United States Center for Disease Control and other institutions around the country and around the world are obligated to find the real agent in order to help protect society. I gotta admit that I jumped right on it too, because of course I want an answer to the centuries-long mystery, but maybe we all need to slow down and re-examine what we actually have. We have 10 cases of salmonella and 15 million deaths. 10 out of 24 samples from 1545 leaves 14 without it. So if 5 from 100 years ago didn't have it, what really did we actually prove? We proved that 10 people had salmonella enterica in 1545, and a woman in Norwegian had it in 1200. According to Soto, paratyphoid C also does not match the symptoms or what we know about the disease. Let's look at what the CDC has to say about Salmonella enterica. Typhoid fever from Salmonella paratyphoid type C is present 6 to 30 days. It causes weakness, stomach pain, headache, diarrhea, constipation, cough, loss of appetite, a rash of a flat rose-colored spots on the trunk. It does have carriers. It can be caught by consuming food with feces. It causes a slow heartbeat. It's common where food and water is unsafe. It's mainly enteric and not hemorrhagic. Fever induces and increases slowly and daily. Dry cough, sore throat. Untreated, it can last for an entire month. Treated, it has a 10 to 30% fatality. It is possible, but it's rare to have life-threatening gastrointestinal hemorrhages, intestinal perforations, and encephalitis. Today, it's treated with antibiotics. How about the symptoms for Cocoliztli? Cocoliztli was reported by Dr. Hernandez, who him and other physicians in the 1600s treated them in the Hospital Real de Indios, and he was also the former physician of King Philip of Spain. Symptoms were black and dry tongue, extreme thirst, green urine or black urine, fast pulse, weak but fast. Eyes in body were yellow, delirium, seizures, nodules behind the ears that were large and sometimes covered the whole neck region, chest pain, tremor, anxiety, green blood flowed out when the veins were cut open, blood was green, pale, dry, and no serosity, gangrene and dead tissue on the lips and different areas of the body, and blood flowed from the ears and from the nose as well as the gums. They also did autopsies, and they found in the autopsies that they had black hearts that drained yellow liquid and then black blood, enlarged liver, black spleen and lungs, semi-putrefied, dry abdomen, and extremely pale. I gotta admit, the shoe really doesn't fit, so it's easy to see why 16th century physicians were stumped and how to treat it. Medical journals gave little clues on successful treatments. The extent of them were as follows. The use of emmetine produced from the epac root, used as an antiprotozoa known for its alkali properties to help dysentery or diarrhea. Draining the pus and cauterizing the large nodules found on the back of the ears and possibly neck region appeared to lend to a better survival, and those whose nose and ears stopped bleeding soon seemed to have a better chance of survival. But that's pretty much all they knew to use to treat it. What about other diseases? Well, when you compare it, there wasn't a rash, so it's not typhoid, Ebola, or Marburg. There's no respiratory issues, so it's not influenza, pertussis, or diphtheria. There's no cyclical fevers, and it does not affect the coastal region, so it's not malaria. Not centered in the gastrointestinal tract, so it's not anthrax. The jaundice and the bleeding in the eyes So it's not plague because that didn't exist in plague. Neck nodules were large, so it's not leptospirosis. It affected Spanishes equally when they caught yellow fever, so we know it wasn't yellow fever. Seems like we're back to square one. Somehow we need to find yet another disease that might match it, or should we just chuck it off as yet another one brought by colonization? Or was it? Some Mexican researchers aren't buying that either and worry that society's current understanding of Cocoliztli is causing a lackadaisical approach to finding a causative agent that looms over Mexico, just waiting for the right conditions to wreak havoc on the citizens. Cocoliztli did seem to have an affinity for the native population, however, it was not uniform in its devastation. It only affected regions populated by natives, however, it had no effect on the natives living in the coastal regions. None of them caught it, none of them died. And the lowlands almost all caught it, but none of them died either. In the highlands, almost all caught it, and the mortality rates were varied by region from 40% to 66% to 86.6%. It's possible there was multiple strains, but it seems that it had a geographical and environmental affinity as well. Also, most telling is that immunity is not inherited. In 55 years after the conquest, the children of the Spanish immigrants began to care for the dead and bury the natives during recurrent outbreaks that lasted 3 to 4 centuries. They built hospitals and performed autopsies on the victims without any gloves. No masks, no gloves, close contact, and no one caught it. Maybe a total of 3 Spanish priests were said to have ever died from it the entire time of caring for them. So that negates immunity. Also, Spaniards and Africans were both spared from Cocoliztli. Transmission mechanisms appeared unique to natives and perhaps revealed a coevolution of sort, lending to the evidence of Cocoliztli being an endemic indigenous causative agent. But what about the contact? Cocoliztli was not transmitted then by aerosols, bloodborne pathogens, fleas, casual contact, secretions, and probably not a waterborne bacteria either. Researchers and colleagues of Soto's from the National Autonomous University of Mexico believe they are onto something. Something in the atmospheric and climate abnormalities of the 16th century that coincides with each of the known 11 outbreaks. Drought has been connected to other mass depopulations of certain culture groups, including the collapse of the Tihuanaca of Bolivia in 11 AD. And most importantly, the first noted massive depopulation of Mesoamerican peoples in the late 8th century and early 9th century, leading to the classic Mayan collapse, known as a mega drought. 250 to 750 AD, known as the classic period, advanced civilization of splendor and prosperity, ended with the terminal classic period, a period marked with great drought, widespread illness, and evidence of hemorrhagic fever, leading to a massive depopulation. Just like in the 16th century, this is indicated by the permanent abandonment of large urban centers, population centers, villages, projects, and buildings stopped midway, and a sharp decline in manufactured items like pottery. Along with the Mayans, the Zapotec, Mixtec, and Chocola cultures collapsed as well. Soto has coined the term drought-associated epidemics of hemorrhagic fever. It also might be noted that the commencement of each outbreak started within days of the first sporadic rainfall after an extended period of drought. Finalizing tree ring data, researchers were able to create a chronological reconstruction of climate over seasons all the way back and beyond 1500 AD. According to the reconstructions, the 8th and 16th century droughts were, I quote, exceeded the severity, persistence, and coverage of any drought witnessed in the United States during the period of instrumental meteorological and hydrological observations. Basically, these were the worst droughts in American history since 1200 AD. Researchers were able to detect drought in the peaks and match them to the exact years of the Cocoliztli outbreaks of the 8th and 16th century as well. Mega droughts and the mechanism of drought-associated epidemics of hemorrhagic fever are not understood, but Cocoliztli is not alone in this pattern. Hantavirus also tends to come after periods of drought as well. But this is where the findings have ended. Research continues today to understand the specific mechanism and connection and explanation between the correlation of these findings and hemorrhagic fever induced by drought.